Hi, I am so excited to share with you today my take on a classic peach pie. This recipe has a secret ingredient in it that brightens up the fruit, gives it so much flavor. So watch and you can see my recipe for a classic peach pie. To begin making our peach pie filling, I am going to take about 7 peaches, and these peaches are really big, so you might need between 7 and 10 peaches, and I'm going to blanch them in hot boiling water first, and then I'm going to plunge them into an ice water bath, and it's going to help those skins slip off the peach real easy. I am putting my peaches in a pot of boiling water, and I have scored the bottom of each peach with a small X shape. And what this is going to do is it's going to help release those skins from off of the peach. And after they have had a chance to sit in the water for about 30 seconds, I'm going to plunge them into a bowl of ice water. Okay, these peaches have been sitting in an ice bath for just about 1 minute, and just watch as these skins just so easily come off that peach. They just release so much easier. If you don't blanch your fruit ahead of time, you might lose a lot of the fruit because the fruit just sticks to the skin of the peach, and this really helps to preserve as much of that gorgeous fruit as possible. So I just make an indent on the side of the peach. I just move my knife down in there and sort of force it away with the edge of my knife away from the pit. And then I just go around that whole pit and I take it off, and I have perfectly cut wedges of peach. Oop, and there goes the pit. That is going to be just perfect for what I want for my pie filling. Okay, now all of our peaches have been sliced. They're in the bowl, and we're going to add the rest of our peach pie filling ingredients. I'm going to add 1/3 cup of granulated white sugar. And then I also have 1/3 cup of brown sugar. We'll break that up. And I have a half of a squeezed lemon juice. I have I have the juice of 1/2 of a lemon, and then I have just 1/8 of a teaspoon of both cinnamon and nutmeg. You don't need a lot of spice for this recipe. And then this is 1/3 cup of tapioca flour. I really like using tapioca flour as a thickening agent in my pie because it's super fine and it dissolves down with those other juices and sugars really well, and it just makes for a really nice, smooth filling for your pie. Now I'm ready to add the secret ingredient. This is the secret ingredient. It is the juice of half an orange. And I also have, I guess this is considered the second part of the secret ingredient. I took that half of an orange and I grated the zest. So we're going to add half of an orange zest into our filling. And I'm also adding in just a pinch of kosher salt into the pie filling. And that's our filling, and I'm going to give it a stir so everything is coated and combined. The reason that I love using orange zest and orange juice, it gives the most bright, amazing flavor. It doesn't take away from the peach flavor, it just adds another layer of flavor. It's fruity, it's bright, and it just smells amazing. It is so delicious. And I really like the flavor of orange and cinnamon together too. This is just one of the most amazing peach pies I've ever had. For our pie, we are using a double crust pie dough recipe. This recipe is mostly butter, but I did remove 2 of the tablespoons of butter that normally the recipe calls for, and I added 2 tablespoons of shortening in its place. I really like this technique because it just makes the crust super flaky, delicious, but you still get all of that really good butter flavor. Okay, I'm using my silicone pie mat. I'm adding a little bit of flour. And here is the first of the pie crusts. Putting a little bit of flour on it. And I'm going to roll it out. We're going to use a 9-inch pie pan. And I made this pie dough several days ago and put it in the fridge. Pie dough stays in the fridge for several days, and I really like making it ahead of time. The secret to making sure that your pie dough is going to do well for your pie is, I think, first of all, you've got to make sure that you pull it out at the right temperature. If it's too soft, it's gonna shrink, and if your pie is too cold, I guess too soft, meaning that you have let it sit out too long. If it sat out too long, it can shrink. And if you don't let it soften enough, it's just gonna crack and it's not gonna work well. I'm using a little knife to just trim the edge, just where it's pretty oddly shapen. If I do this, then I can use some of these little pieces to go in and fill the gaps. I do think that pie dough is forgiving. A lot of people are afraid of pie dough. I used to be very afraid of pie dough, but I've just learned some tricks, and it really can be forgiving. So now that I have rolled it out, I fold it into quarters, and I'm going to put it right into my pan. I put the point of that fold right in the center, and it allows me to just unfold the pie dough right into my pan. And I want to make sure always that I roll it out large enough, because if you pull and tug at your pie crust, it actually encourages more shrinkage. And I do have a little bit of an edge here. I'm going to add this pie. I'm just going to press it there. Just a little bit. It's a little bit of a pie dough hack. Now we've got our pie crust in the bottom of the pie pan. Now I'm going to add that peach pie filling to the bottom crust in the pan. All right, now I'm going to pour all of this beautiful peach pie filling right into the pie pan. Oh, it's just juicy. I want to make sure I get all that filling. And it's pretty full, so I'm just going to ease the fruit around a little bit, but that is pretty full. I probably could have done 6 peaches instead of 7, but I'm just greedy. All right, now it's ready for us to put on our top crust. And now I'm going to do the top crust of our pie. Some people like to do a lattice top for the top of their peach pies. I love doing a lattice top for a cherry pie, and in my other video, you can see how I've done a lattice pie top on that cherry pie, but I want to cover this whole peach pie with top crust, the whole thing. I'm also going to roll it out to about 12 inches. If I didn't mention that before, 12 inches for a 9-inch pie pan. So I'm going to fold it in quarters again for easy transport over onto the top of my pie. Okay, I'm going to lift this on top of it. Again, the center of the point of this triangle goes right into the center, and I just unfold it over, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to take some kitchen shears and trim the edges of this pie crust, because that is pretty long. This pie crust also has a secret ingredient in the dough, and in another video I'm going to be making, I'm going to show you exactly how I make my favorite pie crust, and you'll see why I use this secret ingredient in my pie dough. It also helps the crust and the cooked pie crust be just so super flaky, and gives it a really interesting flavor, and it also helps it not be tough. Like when you work pastry dough too much, it can get too tough if you're overworking it, but the ingredient that I'll talk about in my next video will show you how it will prevent a tough pie crust. So now I have covered my pie and I've trimmed the edges, so I'm going to go around and sort of tuck that top crust under. It's a lot of rotating, but I want to tuck those two crusts together just so they're a little gathered together, and then I'll go back around and give it a really nice fluted edge. Now that that top crust is gathered together with the bottom crust, I'm going to flute it again. I've already started fluting it, but this just gives it a little bit more decoration to it. And I just pinch and go around. This just really seals the pie dough pieces together and gives it a little bit of a scallop edge. All right, now I'm going to take my plastic wrap that I used for my pie dough that I had sitting in the fridge. I'm going to recycle it, and I'm going to cover the pie with my plastic wrap pieces, because I'm going to put it in the freezer just for about 10 or 15 minutes, just to make sure that pie dough is super chilled before we bake it in the oven. So I'm making a little bit of an egg wash. I'm going to use this to brush over the top of my pie before I bake it in the oven. And I'm using 1 egg and just a few drops, just maybe half of it, maybe a teaspoon or maybe a little more, maybe half a tablespoon of heavy cream. I'm just going to beat it together like so. I'm going to brush this on top of the pie before I bake it, sprinkle some sugar on it, and then it's ready for the oven. Our pie has been sitting in the freezer for about 10 minutes. The crust is nice and firm. And one thing I'm going to do before I do our egg wash is I'm going to score it. I could have done this before, but I didn't. I'm just going to put a few vent marks to score the top of our pie. This helps steam escape, and it looks cute. And now I'm going to take that egg wash with the pastry brush. You don't want too much, you just want to get it a little bit damp. And then I'm just going to brush all over the top of this pie. I also like to brush the edges, that fluted part of the crust. It helps it to look really golden and really yummy looking. Okay, that's our egg wash. And now I'm going to take regular granulated sugar, and I'm going to generously sprinkle sugar all over the top of this pie crust. The sugar gives it a beautiful color, a nice sweet flavor. And it looks like I'm doing a lot, which it probably is. It's probably in total about a tablespoon all over, but I think it's worth it. Okay, now it's time to bake our peach pie. The total bake time on this pie is for 65 minutes. The first 30 minutes, I'm going to put the pie into the oven without any sort of foil. But then for the last 35 minutes, I'm going to take a piece of foil and cover the top of the whole pie with a piece of foil to help that crust continue to cook without burning. I'm also going to put our pie on a preheated foil-lined cookie sheet that's in the oven right now, preheating along with the oven. I like to do this so that bottom crust really cooks, so you don't get a soggy bottom crust. I want to make sure that it cooks all the way, and that preheated, pre-warmed cookie sheet really helps that. Okay, I have preheated the oven to 350 degrees. I'm going to put this in the oven and let it bake for that first 30-minute bake. Okay, that pie has had about 65 minutes in the oven, and I think it could use about 5 minutes more. I'm going to give it an extra 5 minutes, and then we're going to go take it out of the oven. Okay, here is our completed, finished, perfect baked peach pie. This pie looks so good. It looks so gorgeous. I can't wait to try this. Now, you do have to give your pie time to cool. I usually make my family wait until the next day to cut into the pie so that filling is nice and thick. Here is our classic peach pie.